All right, let's move on to the next story. Now, earlier this week, the federal government gave Nigerians the assurance of adequate petrol supply as citizens voiced concerns over high cost and unavailability of fuel. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokpobiri, noted that President Bola Tinubu is deeply concerned about the welfare of citizens, adding that efforts are in top gear to solve the issue of fuel scarcity bedeviling the country. While cost of petrol has increased, causing a corresponding increase in fares, federal government warned Nigerians against panic buying of petrol, saying it has sufficient product in the country. I see have Adele, of course, in the studio joining via Zoom with me. I see have Ibrahim Garba. Ibrahim Garba, very quickly now, the Nigerian government has cautioned Nigerians not to engage in panic buying of petrol, saying it has sufficient product in the country. Now, how reassuring is this statement?
This is the right time for us to implement some of these policies, especially in the PIE. It calls for the regulation of the petroleum sector completely. There's no hiding place again because Mr. President has announced it that, look, subsidy is gone. The same thing as monopoly. It's a free market economy. You can come in with your product and sell, and people have the liberty to go and purchase anywhere they like. And added to the fact that, you know, because of the shortage which we experienced recently, which caused scarcity, there's a need for government and at the same time the NNPC to think outside the box. At the moment, we have a situation whereby there's no money to even purchase the product, but that put pressure on the consumers. And that is why at this time we are calling on Nigerians, at the same time the federal government, to come up with a clear policy direction for Nigerians to follow concerning pricing and at the same time concerning haulage. These key elements are major setbacks for the petroleum industry, and it's telling is causing untold hardship on Nigerians.
Now, Ayodele, quickly, now, Heineken Lokpobiri, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, said once distribution stabilizes, price will regulate naturally. It's important to emphasize that the government is not fixing prices as the sector is deregulated. Now, what is the implication of this statement?
Well, you see, I think that, communications is always extremely important. And that, I think, is one important aspect that government hasn't taken very seriously, because once you communicate poorly and once you're not being authentic or honest in your communications, you lose credibility. Now, you cannot, on the one hand, claim that, the government has fully deregulated the sector. But we can see clearly from the books of NNPC, that trillions have already been expended on subsidizing petrol, whether they like to call it subsidies or under recovery. The reality is that the government is spending trillions of naira subsidizing the pump price of petrol today. So you cannot claim on the one hand that, the sector has been completely deregulated, whereas on the second hand, the government is also still subsidizing petrol to a very large extent. And of course, that I think it was 3-4 days ago where the NNPC also announced the new adjusted pump price of petrol, where it pegged it at about 855 naira per liter. Now, you cannot be pegging and announcing prices if you're operating fully in a deregulated sector. And of course, you and I know that indeed, if the sector is fully deregulated, the NNPC will not be the sole importer of petrol. There will be competition to a very large extent, and the NMDPRA will perform its function as a regulator of quality and standards. So the truth is, the government seems to be speaking from both sides of its mouth at every given time. And at this particular point in time, it needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, and it needs to be truthful to the Nigerian people. You can't claim that you have adequate supply. And, people have been experiencing scarcity for the last, 2 or 3 weeks, struggling to get petrol from filling stations. These things don't hide itself. If there's scarcity, people can see. If there's supply, there wouldn't be queues across the country. I mean, it's as clear as daylight. So, they have to be honest in their communications. Otherwise, they continue to lose credibility and lose the trust of the Nigerian people. And that will make it difficult for them to mobilize Nigerians towards the actualization of their, policy programs and initiatives.
Gabra, let me just put this to you quickly. Now, as an oil-producing nation, having to transport our crude to be processed outside our shores without NNPC being able to solve the problem. Now, does this analogy defeat the whole essence of NNPC?
Well, that's funny. NNPC has the capacity. They have been the official supplier of petroleum products. But over the years, we discovered that there is a gap between the NNPC, the oil marketers, and the IOCs. We don't even know who to trust in this business again. And that is why, like my colleague earlier pointed out, government has to be clear on these policies. What are you giving out to Nigerians? And why is it all of a sudden the price change from 617 to 885 or 855? So I think there's a lack of trust between the NNPC and at the same time the marketers. And government is feeling the pain. More especially, NNPC is operating on deficit of about $6 billion US. So they are looking for ways, to augment and at the same time raise funds. The best thing for the federal government is for NNPC to be quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange so that it can run